Finally tonight, modern-day slavery in the United States. Jeffrey Kay of KCET Los Angeles reports.
Berkeley, California. Last January, the city's wealthiest landlord was arrested and charged with buying 2 teenage girls in India and bringing them to the United States for forced labor. Anchorage, Alaska. Immigration authorities are currently investigating claims by Russian dancers that they were tricked into coming to the U.S. and forced to perform in a local strip club. Las Vegas, Nevada. In September, authorities arrested the alleged leaders of an Asian organized crime ring, charging them with bringing Chinese women to work in brothels from New York to Los Angeles. To federal law enforcement officials and human rights activists, these incidents prove that slavery is once again alive and thriving in America. Michael Giannacco heads the civil rights section of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles.
What we are experiencing in this country is a modern form of slavery. In many ways, it parallels the same experience that the victims felt in the antebellum days of the South. The people that are brought here are essentially not brought in chains, but they're brought accompanied by traffickers. They're made sure that as soon as they arrived at the point of destination, that they're whisked away to an unfamiliar situation in the same way that the slaves in the South were whisked away to the slave master or the slave trader to an unfamiliar location. And then once the slaves are acculturated and the master starts feeling comfortable about their ability to be trusted and not to run away, that they were then released from their chains.
As many as 50,000 people are illicitly trafficked into the United States annually, according to a 1999 CIA study. Once here, they're forced to work as prostitutes, sweatshop laborers, farm hands, and servants in private homes. The United Nations reports that as many as 2 million people are trapped in the global slave trade. Victims, mostly women, are often desperate to escape poverty and abuse in countries racked by economic turmoil. That was the case with Tong Lim Kapiranan, a 43-year-old mother of 2 from rural Thailand, now living in Los Angeles. Seeking to provide a better life for her family, in 1991, Kapiranan was one of 3 Thai women trafficked to Los Angeles to work for this woman, Supawan Virapol, a pillar of the Thai community. Kampiranan says Virapol promised the women decent treatment and $240 a month working in her suburban home and in her restaurant located in a shopping mall. But instead, Kampiranan says she and the other women received 6 years of exploitation and abuse working as slaves. Kampiranan often worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and in the 6 months prior to her escape, she received no pay.
I would wake up about 6 or 7 in the morning and start cleaning the house. Around 10 o'clock, Supawan would then take me to the restaurant. I'd work there until about midnight. When I got back home, I could only have a few hours sleep, and then I had to wake up and start cleaning the house again the next morning.
Kampiranan says Virapol controlled her and the other Thai women by confiscating their passports, censoring their mail, and restricting contact with the outside world.
She didn't allow me to see other Thai people. She told me they were bad, and because I was here illegally, I shouldn't see other people.
Virapol also used the names of the Thai women to establish fraudulent credit histories with which she purchased a Mercedes-Benz and a new home. To maintain obedience, Kampiranan says Supawan Virapol threatened family members in Thailand.
Supawan told me that killing someone in Thailand would only cost about $120. Supawan said she could hire a killer.
And you took that as a death threat against your family?
Yes, yes.
In late 1999, Virapol was convicted of fraud, harboring illegal aliens, and one of 3 counts of involuntary servitude. That count involved a worker, not Kampiranan, whom Virapol had struck. Virapol is now serving an 8-year prison sentence. She says she is innocent of all charges, and in a written statement to the NewsHour said the women in her house were always free to leave. Quote, "If you are interested in interviewing someone who kept people as slaves, then you are covering the wrong story. I traveled abroad 2 to 3 times yearly, and the ladies held the keys to house, business, and family Mercedes," unquote.
Well, I think the Virapol case is really a classic case of trafficking.
Jennifer Stanger is co-founder of the Los Angeles-based Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, an organization which aids victims of the modern-day slave trade. She says to maintain control, traffickers prey on their victims' vulnerability.
They don't speak English. They have very low educational levels, low job skills. They know that they're illegal, and their fears of the police and immigration are very real. They've been told that, the police will, rape you or, do something horrible to you. And in their home countries, that's probably true. So their whole frame of reference is completely different, and their worldview is their worldview from their home country.
The odyssey of Campiranon and the women who worked for Virapol ended when a Virapol acquaintance tipped off authorities. In Southern California, the women's experience is not isolated. LA, with its immigrant communities and commercial links to Asia and Latin America, is a crossroads of the international slave trade. It's also the place where slavery leapt from the history page to the front page, when in 1995, some 70 Thai sweatshop workers were discovered toiling in prison-like captivity in the suburb of El Monte.
The garment manufacturers and the defendants in that case were able to amass millions of dollars in profits as a result of keeping that forced labor in this country.
The El Monte sweatshop case highlighted the connections between human bondage and profits, a connection most clearly seen in the global sex industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar business whose human merchandise increasingly comes from Russia and Eastern Europe. In video shot by a human rights group, Russian prostitutes working in Western Europe talked about the traffickers' ruthlessness.
The pimps don't give a damn at all. Nothing concerns them. They have one goal, to get the money. If I don't pay them back, they'll sell me. Then I won't get to see Russia for another 10 years.
In Southern California, trafficking of women for sex is often controlled by Asian organized crime rings. They advertise not so subtly in local ethnic newspapers and turn suburban apartments into brothels.
Is this a profitable business? Extremely profitable.
Keith Bacon is a detective with the Organized Crime Unit in Monterey Park, a middle-class Chinese-American community where several prostitution rings have been busted.
Say you've got a house with 5 girls. Say you're charging $100. Each girl does 5 to 10 liaisons a day. That adds up. What's your overhead? You have to feed the girl. You have the rent of the house. Essentials, household essentials. There's not much overhead. It's a lot of profit, extremely high amount of profit.
As in the case of Kevin Dong, accused of operating a prostitution ring with women brought from Asia. In just one 6-month period, Dong made over $460,000, operating brothels in these suburban homes and apartments, according to federal authorities. Frequently, prostitutes have to work off huge debts to their traffickers. In undercover video shot last year by U.S. immigration agents in Thailand, a woman talked about the payments she'd have to make.
Hey, can I ask you how much you're going to pay? Can I ask you that? Is that okay? Like 40,000? Is it 40 exactly?
Yes.
Oh, really? That's a lot of money, isn't it?
If we were talking $30,000, $40,000, they're given the explanation that you have to stay with us and service 300 clients, at maybe $100, $120 a client, to pay off your debt to us before moving on.
Anti-slavery activist Stanger says with few services available to help victims of trafficking, their ordeals don't necessarily end with freedom.
People who kind of fall through the cracks in our federal system may be deported right back into the hands of their traffickers. When they're deported, sent back home, who picks them up? Trafficker, and then puts them in debt again.
To educate women about trafficking, several countries have launched public awareness campaigns. They range from commercials shown on Ukrainian television to stage plays performed in the rural Philippines.
Sex, aliw, laman ang ibinebenta. At dahil sex ang produkto.
In the United States, landmark legislation passed last year will stiffen penalties against traffickers and make it easier for victims to stay in this country and receive help.
If you've been in servitude for 5 years, 7 years, it can take maybe 10 years to really get your life back together, especially when you don't have legal status.
Hi, my birthday today.
It's a process Tonglim Kampiranan has started. She now has a new job and new friends in LA's Thai community.
The people who've been trafficked, they're relatively normal folks that wound up in a very abnormal situation, and we're able to really see how resilient they are after they're freed and they get to rebuild their lives.
Where I want to go, I go. I want to work, I work. I have choice now. Same freedom, right? Yeah.
But while Kampiranan celebrates her freedom, much work remains. In Los Angeles, federal prosecutors have established a first-of-its-kind worker exploitation task force. Activists worry that inequities in the global economy, combined with the ease of international travel, ensure a continuing stream of victims for the modern-day slave trade.